my soul.
Say hello and welcome to Let's Talk. I'm John Kane. I'm your host, and I'm happy to be here. Got a few things that I want to talk about today. So it's not a one-topic show today. It is just me here today. I'm going to be introducing my new co-host in next month in February. Who my former co-host, Shawnee Rice, helped set me up with. So I'm pretty excited about that, and so we'll look forward to that in February. But we got a couple things going on. Next week, before I get into it, I want to remind people that next week I'm after my show, I will be screening a film. I'll be screening Indian Horse, and it is it's a really good film. At some points of it, you think, wow, this seems almost trite. But then as the story plays out, you realize how solid this thing is in terms of capturing what happened at residential schools. And if you don't know what a residential school is, then that's even more reason for you to come out and participate in the screening. My screenings are free. I do put out a donation box for WBAI, so it is a WBAI event. Reggie, have you get a chance to play the card at all? Did you?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh yeah. No. It was played.
We do have a cart we've been playing out, reminding people that next week at 7 p.m. at the Brooklyn Commons downstairs at 388 Atlantic Avenue, I'll be showing Indian Horse. And look, it is a very, very good film and disturbing. It is not a happy story. So it's about hockey and sports and all that stuff, and showing some skill sets and that kind of thing. But it's not a happy story. So I would look forward to you coming out. If you're not familiar at all with residential schools, this is your opportunity to learn something about a really tragic part of our history and a hidden part of your history, because nobody wants to talk about this stuff. And this is an era that not only swept the United States and Canada, Australia, Africa, the Caribbean. There are places all over the world that adopted the American model. The idea of killing the Indian saves the man. So come out and watch this film. I've showed a couple of films. I did the one with Gord Downey, which was kind of an animated film. I did that about Cheney Wenjack. I did Older Than America, which was a Georgina Lightning film. But and there are a bunch of films, and it's hard to find a film that kind of captures what's really going on here, and especially it's also hard to find a film that doesn't somehow heroize some white savior in the whole thing, and this film doesn't do that. So come on, it is. I will say that Clint Eastwood, who I'm not a fan of politically, is listed as the executive producer, but honestly, I don't know that he had anything to do with producing the film other than throwing his name on it to help give the film, a boost, a commercial boost. And I guess if he did that for that reason, that's a good thing. I just don't want false credit being given to somebody who would not have taken a project on like this himself. So, all right. So let me get that out of the way. I am going to talk a little bit about WBAI today, not coming out of the gate here, but I think it's important that people realize that we as a station, we believe that we're an important part of New York, but we need you, the listener. We need you, the listener, not only to sponsor and support and donate to the show, and you can go to our pledge line, 516-620-3602. Become a buddy, make a one-time donation, whatever. But we also need you to be our voice in the community. We don't have a big marketing budget here. Let me take it back. We don't have a marketing budget here. So we rely on you to spread the word. And, if you hear a show, whether it's this show or any other show, and you say, look, I heard something at WBAI, and I know many people don't even know WBAI still exists. I mean, honestly. But spread the word if you hear something, even if it's something you don't agree. I don't care if you spread the word and say, I heard something on WBI that really pissed me off. Well, you know what? Somebody's going to listen and say, well, let me get pissed off too. So by all means, do that. But we also need you to be our advocate. We know that there was an attempted coup on the operation of WBAI back, it was October, right?
October.
Yeah, October.
Yes.
I got to tell you, the coup's not over, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And in fact, you may have been hearing the piece that Alex Steinberg puts out there. We'll play it during my show here, so you're somewhat familiar with what's happening at the Pacifica level, but and how it affects us. But I want to talk about that a little bit. There's actually a really important court date that's happening today. In fact, if I could get word before the show is over on how that court hearing went, I'll let you know. But I will be doing this on a future show nonetheless. But we rely on you, and we need to let you know what's happening, because how do we ask you to step up if we're not keeping you informed? So and for those of you who are kind of in the know, you want to join us when we open up the phone lines, by all means you can do so. All right, let me get into it a little bit. First, I want to say 6 years ago today, I became the interim host of First Voices Indigenous Radio. I took over for a year for Tiogasin Ghost Horse on First Voices Indigenous Radio, and it was a good time. It was a good time. Obviously I changed the flavor of that show somewhat because Tiogasin and I are so different. I'm not as much. I'm not the spiritual type. So, and I don't look. People. That's how some people are. That's not how I am. So, but that's not me. But I think we did some good shows. I had some great guests, and it was a good time doing that show for a year. But then the year came to an end. And honestly, I thought that was going to be it. See you later, WBAI. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. But Mario Murillo, who was the interim program director at the time, he asked me if I would be interested in doing a talkback show. And I'm thinking, absolutely. In fact, I would have liked to have turned First Voices into more of a talkback show, but at least while I was at the mic. So I began 5 years ago, not today, but 5 years ago, approximately this time of year, I began to host Let's Talk. And so now that we're into our 6th year, and I'm pretty well settled in. We've had some changes. We got moved around on the schedule. Times changed a little bit. But we are a 2-hour show that relies heavily on you, the listener, to participate. You guys provide as much content, or you get me to provide content by your prodding and your comments and your support or your criticisms. And so I rely on you very heavily. So I want to thank you for that. And we will continue to do that as long as we're able. As long as you support this show, as long as you support this station, we will continue to bring this to you. Okay. Well, I got, like I said, I got a number of things. So I did want to, kind of mark the anniversary. I'll save the big one for last, but yesterday I was on a show in Hawaii called Songs of Sovereignty. It used to be on Kauai Community Radio. Now I think it's primarily just a vlog, I guess you would call it, or what, I don't know what do they call them. It's like a video podcast. And so I joined them via Zoom, and we did a show. And it's interesting because, the friends that I have in Hawaii are battling a bunch of things. And many of you heard about Mauna Kea, the idea of trying to fight the desecration of what they consider their sacred mountain by the scientific community wanting to build a 30-meter telescope. Such a massive undertaking that they have to flout all of the building codes to build this massive building on the top of a volcanic mountain. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. But anyway, so you've probably heard a lot about it. I've had Pua Case on, and I've had a bunch of people who've joined me. But I've also talked to you about the Hawaiian Kingdom struggle. The idea that there's a solid base of the native Hawaiian population that has almost come out of the shadows after years of being oppressed as people living on their own illegally occupied lands, are making their legal case, their moral case, their ethical case for the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And they have a lot of legal foundation to supporting them. I mean, the fact of the matter is the United States illegally occupied Hawaii. They never had an annexation treaty. They actually violated the U.S. Constitution to even lay claim to Hawaii. And then of course they turned it into a U.S. state. And all of it was just shrouded in corruption. And the politicians, even some of the ones who went along with it, but certainly the ones who opposed it, they knew what they were doing. They knew that it was criminal. But so there's that. And out of that comes a pretty solid movement of people who are part of the sovereignty movement, Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Now, the Obama administration and previous administrations, and a couple of senators, Inoue and Akaka and others, they've always tried to embrace, this, again, make America great, the whole God bless America thing, and they wanted to figure out how they could do something to accommodate the distinction that always should have been acknowledged for the Native Hawaiians. So one of the efforts, and this became a big effort during the Obama administration, was to convert Native Hawaiians into another federal Indian tribe. Yeah, FedRec, as I call it. And I spell it FEDWRECK. I got fully engaged with a bunch of the folks in Hawaii. Look, they had a whole series of hearings throughout Hawaii, and like 15 locations throughout various parts of the all islands. And of course, it's not always easy for people to get there, but people got there, and they showed up, and they, I mean, look, the Interior Department that was hosting these meetings, they're supposed to be these public hearings, these public meetings or listening sessions, whatever, they became so concerned because of the outrage that the Hawaiian people were expressing towards them, that they brought in Bureau of Land Management guards and cops to protect them. They were afraid for their lives. Why? Because the Hawaiian people were pissed. They said, who the hell are you to bring the Interior Department here? You bring the State Department here. We're not Smokey the Bear. We're not a park or a recreation. We are a sovereign people. And so they were opposed to this whole idea that the Interior Department was going to try to create a streamlined process to convert Native Hawaiians into what would essentially be the largest Indian tribe. And I say that, with vile in my throat as I say it, in the United States. And in fact, it would be probably, I think the Navajo are the largest at between 200,000 or 300,000 people, but this would be like 500,000. And of course, they probably wouldn't create 500,000 sites. They would actually try to subdivide them and divide them up into a whole bunch of competing interests. That's just the way the United States works. But the ironic part is, just down the road here in Long Island, the Shinnecock got pitched into a battle. They didn't even enter it willingly in the way that you would think, but they got into this battle for federal recognition. It's lasted 30 years, and it was really based on them trying to get land back. It's lasted 30 years and cost them $30 million. And the Obama administration says, no, we're going to just turn you into, we're going to recognize you. No process. Not the same kind of scrutiny that some of these really desperate peoples, and I'm not putting the Shinnecock in that category, but many of the desperate peoples who are trying to get federal recognition. I say be careful what you wish for. But anyway, because what people don't understand, that federal recognition, the definition of it is a tribe, band, or nation of Indians subordinate to the laws of the United States. I mean, that's what it means. So if you're in Hawaii and you are bound and determined to assert Hawaiian sovereignty, you're not going to get it through the federal recognition process. And yet there are people that are trying to sell them out. And why? Because there's money involved. And there is a certain status within, the Interior Department, what federal recognition means. What it really means is the federal government will, in some cases, determine who your leadership is, but they will provide the authority of the federal government to what they would consider the recognized leader. Oftentimes that becomes disastrous. With the goons, of Oglala, the guardians of the Oglala Nation that the AIM was fighting against. What we've seen in Oneida, New York, and what we see in Cayuga territory. There's been time after time after time where the federal government makes the determination on who the leadership even is. So it's an absolute mess. So anyway, I got the chance to join Kailani and her her other co-hosts and guests, and it was a good time. And the hard part is when Native people join our guests on the show, oftentimes they've already been indoctrinated into the federal recognition, process. So much so that, you'll hear Native people get on there talking about, oh, vote in the elections. The folks that I'm talking to on that show, they don't want to vote in the elections. They say, no, I'm not. We're not Americans. We're Hawaiians. We're Kanaka. So anyway, it was a pleasure to join my friends, and I'm hoping one of these times I'll get a chance to get out there, and I'll be one of their guests in studio, and maybe I'll do a remote broadcast back here from Hawaii. That could work. So I want to mention that. Now here's something else I'm going to throw out there, and we are going to go to phones early today. So just so you know, I'm kind of rattling through a bunch of stuff, and you can feel free to talk about any of this stuff. But something else I learned just last week. Ramsey Orta. And now, if that name rings a bell, but you can't quite place him, Ramsey Orta is the only person to get jail time who was associated with the murder of Eric Gardner. Now, why would that be? Because he filmed it. Ramsey Orta is the guy who filmed the murder of at the hands of the New York NYPD in Staten Island. He filmed it on a cell phone, and he has been hounded by the police ever since, and he's in prison. Ironically, he's in prison down the road from me, just off just almost to the. Actually, I think some of that property borderlines the Seneca Nation. And actually, I used to live at a house that literally shared a border with the prison. But the Collins Correctional Facility is in Gowanda, New York, which is the village just off of the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So Ramsey Orta is an unwitting neighbor of mine, as it would turn out. So I learned this, and I immediately reached out to his people because I wanted to get a chance to spend some time talking to him and talking to his fiancée and some of the people who were representing him. It's a really ugly story, the whole what Ramsey has gone through, and there's also a more complicated story associated with the murder of Eric Gardner. And I want to get, at least get a perspective. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of theories, conspiracy theories. Some of them are, have a lot of truth to them. One thing that we know for sure, the police put Eric Gardner in their sights on the record over the sale of loose cigarettes. And that's why last week I mentioned that, Eric Gardner's death, partially is in the hands of one of the guys who's running for president, Mike Bloomberg. Mike Bloomberg was one of the guys who waged this war against untaxed cigarettes in such a way that's been the New York culture, and that's the culture that will let bodegas that are owned by some people continue to go unchallenged selling these things, and yet other people, people of color in particular, would be scrutinized. But for all of that, although that's the story that the police said as far as why they claim they were bothering Eric in the first place, he was not selling cigarettes. He had broken up a fight, and there's a lot of intrigue that goes into what it was that Eric Gardner had busted up that day, and what was the real reason that the police came out in such a large force, especially since there was no crime being committed. I mean, he wasn't charged with anything. He was just being choked to death, for all the world to see because of Ramsey Orta. So I'm going to pursue this story a little bit, and obviously I've got only a little bit of a different perspective. Part of it is because of the animosity I have towards the state on how they on the environment they have created, where most of the time it's Native people who have been the victims of this state aggression. But in this situation, they used this aggression, the state aggression, for a completely other purpose. And I think I'm going to try to tell that story as we go forward. So that's what we got to look forward to as we as in this new year, in my 6th season as the host of Let's Talk. All right, now let me get into the. Well, you know what? We're almost at the bottom of the hour, so here's what we'll do. We'll take a break. When we come back, I got to talk about the Super Bowl. And I'm sure I'm going to bring up something in the Super Bowl. As I told Reggie before the show, I says, did we forget who's playing? And Reggie's immediate thing was, oh, yeah, the Chiefs. I says, no, the other guys. We're going to talk about both teams when we come back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk. We'll be back after this. All right, thanks for coming back. Hey, this is John Kane. That's Logan Stats, and I'm going to play several tracks of his, and that's from his CD, Goodbye Goldia. Logan is he's Mohawk, and I know it sounds like I play an awful lot of Mohawk music, and you're right, I do. I make no apologizes for that.
That doesn't make you a bad person.
No, that doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
So anyway, that's Logan. He's from Six Nations Reserve, or Oswego, as we call it in the language, and that's some good stuff from him. Easy listening, really easy listening. He doesn't like Murray. He's not like going after social issues too much. Although I do like that whole idea. Ain't no priest gonna save my soul, ain't no thief gonna steal my gold, or whatever. I love that line from Simple Man. But anyway, okay. First off, I stood during the break. I'm gonna do it again here now. For those of you who are listening on radio, you have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm showing off my shirt. Every shirt has a story when I come to the studio, so I'm gonna stand up so you can see it. All right, that moment of silence was
LTN.
LTN TV. That's my YouTube channel. So go to YouTube and look for Let's Talk Native TV. That's where all of the videos, including this video, will be up on YouTube. I do the short form videos. That's where my We Are Not Your Mascots video can be seen. Columbus in His Own Words. My video on Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the Doctrine of Discovery. All of those shows. Those storylines. We're doing more and more with video as Jake, who's my partner back home, we're doing more and more. And of course, we turn all my shows, my Let's Talk shows here in New York and my Let's Talk Native shows back home. Now, my shows are put up as podcasts on SoundCloud. That we put them up through SoundCloud. Spotify now carries Let's Talk Native podcast. So if you go to Spotify and you look for Let's Talk Native, that's where my Let's Talk and my Let's Talk Native shows are listed up as podcasts. So by all means, subscribe to my podcasts. Share them with your friends. Look, I promote WBAI at the same time. And like I said, as per my shirt, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV, and that's where we post all these videos up. So I wanted to do my shameless plug of my work here and beyond here. All right, now I got to get into it. So apparently, I think everybody's kind of missed some of the irony on. We talk about mascot issues all the time, but the two teams that are playing each other in the Super Bowl are the 49ers and the Chiefs. Now, the immediate thing, you think, a native person, he's going to talk about, the Chiefs and the fact that it's a native mascot and it's racist and all that stuff. Yes, it is. And yes, I'm saying all of that. But let's think about who they're playing. The 49ers. Now, if you don't know what a 49er is, well, then, again, you suck at history. So I'm going to tell you what a 49er is. The 49ers are the gold rush guys. These are the guys who, by tens of thousands of people, rushed out to California because gold was discovered on the ranch of a guy by the name of John Sutter, who was kind of a failed rancher who only survived because of the enslaved native people. He had native slaves who worked his ranch and worked his farm and that kind of stuff. But gold was discovered on his land or on the land he occupied. We won't talk about who really owns what land. And that's when, for one thing, it also prompted the United States to wage a bloody war where men, women, and children were killed in Mexico to promote. And this was James A. Polk, I think it was. This was the Polk administration, I think, that decided manifest destiny meant that you not only kill Indians, but you got to kill Mexicans too. To the extent that there was really a difference. But so anyway, that's how the westward expansion, happens. Part of it happens with this discovery of gold. So what happens because of this gold? Well, again, one of the biggest and bloodiest chapters of the American genocide, and the last bounties that were offered up for native scalps was as a direct result of the 49ers. It was to pave the way for massive. What do they call it? Prospecting, gold prospecting. Yeah. So massive gold prospecting. And in fact, the state of California, or actually, I guess, were they even a state yet? But anyway, California in 1851 and 1852 in the course of those couple of years, they spent $1 million funding militias, private militias. The ones who now show up in places like Virginia to promote the gun rights. Yeah, those guys, to slaughter Native people. So not only were there bounties being offered, I mean, they actually had to do a whole bond offering to pay for, to fund the killing of Native people. In fact, some of these guys who failed at prospecting for gold found another way to make money: kill Native people. So the irony that a team called the 49ers is playing a team that has, that uses Native imagery, called the Chiefs, in the Super Bowl. I know it was missed by all you guys, but it sure as hell wasn't missed by me. So I want to throw it out there as this really ironic, again, use of imagery and mascots and history. I mean, the idea that, and even I think the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, did this big thing a few years back where he was during one of the anniversaries of the gold rush, I guess, which essentially this would be part of the anniversary because it occurred for several years, just praising how wonderful the gold rush was, ignoring the fact that thousands and thousands of Native people, tens of thousands of Native people were slaughtered, specifically to get rid of them, to eliminate us from. I mean, this is before L. Frank Baum calls for the extermination and annihilation. No, this is already happening. But the funny thing is, you had L. Frank Baum in the 1890s calling for the extermination because he said, look, we've done so many bad things to these people. The only way we're ever going to be secure is to get rid of the rest of them. Well, the bad things that he was talking about was this. This was among these horrendous things that were done to Native people. So, look, I am really, really troubled with, sometimes with pro sports in general. And look, I understand that, sports ends up being a real opportunity for people of color to really, gain, recognition for their talents and that kind of stuff. But it is so exploitive. It is so exploitive, not only to the athletes, black and others, but it's also the appropriation is just insane. And again, now, having said what I said, don't anyone think for a moment that I'm somehow rooting for Kansas City because because they're playing the 49ers. Look, a bunch of non-Native people appropriating Native imagery and stands full of tens of thousands of people doing this horrendous tomahawk chop, which is, again, the tomahawk chop is mocking a violent act that either did or did more often than not happen to Native people than by Native people. So again, the NFL just continues to absolutely just amaze me with their inappropriateness, and I think it's really important that people understand where the San Francisco team gets its name from, and how problematic that is, and what the truth of the gold rush and the 49ers really was. I mean, know some history, for crying out loud. I mean, know some history. Which, again, is why I'm showing a film next week. So, again, I want to remind people, again, come down next week if you want to learn some history. And some of this history that I'm talking about with the residential schools, it also was happening during the same time. See, one of the things that, and I talk about this on this show and my show back home, there's a lack of context. Every time we talk about an issue, a Native issue, people forget what was happening in the rest of the world. So when I talk about Abraham Lincoln emancipating the slaves, in January of 1863, I've got to mention that a week earlier, the day after Christmas in 1862, there was an execution, the largest execution in the history of the United States, signed by Abraham Lincoln. We got to put some of this history into context. And you know what? And if we're going to use expressions, I hear people use expressions, they don't even think about what they mean. And one that comes to mind is, oh, yeah, such and such went off the reservation on that one. What the hell does that mean? Went off the reservation on that one? I'll tell you what it means. Good Indians stayed put. They didn't escape the reservations. So if you went off the reservation, it means that you were wild. It means you were free, but free is not a good thing. if you're not white. So when they say Bill Clinton really went off the reservation on that one, or was such and such, or Congress refused to show up and they all went off the reservation, no, they aren't. They don't mean they went off some reserved little spot. This is metaphorically referring to the fact that the good Indians stayed put and did what they were told, and the ones who were non-compliant, the ones who were wild, the ones who were hostiles, because when you went off the reservation, that's what you were labeled as. In fact, you were not only labeled as a hostile, but it also meant that there was open season on you. So, look, words matter, but damn, at some point, you got to know what some of this stuff means. You just got to know what some of this stuff means. All right, let me go ahead and open up the phone lines. Our phone line is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of this show. Look, I know I threw a lot out there. Look, I don't care if you want to talk about Logan Stats, but, anniversary of my coming here, that might not be something worth discussing, but the 49ers and the Chiefs. Yeah, I think the irony is too thick not to talk about. The ongoing coup for WBAI, Ramsey Orta. Oh, I didn't even talk about the fact that the governor of Oklahoma is suing in federal court to declare that the native casinos that he would not renew the gaming compact with now are illegal and have to be shut down. So he's trying to sue the federal government to shut down native gaming, which now this guy is a Republican, but I guarantee the Democrat up there in Albany, if he's even there, he's looking at the same thing. He's looking to see how much he can force the Seneca Nation into complying, into coughing up money. This is all about money. Governor Stitz in Oklahoma, who claims to be a card-carrying Cherokee, by the way, is squeezing all of the native territories. Some of them are kind of acquiescing, but the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Cherokee are standing up, and he's going after him. He's going after him with and it's crazy. He literally says that they are unlawfully profiting from their casinos. Unlawfully, that they're somehow, that they're gaining revenue from their businesses, illegally or whatever. It's insane. So I'll throw that out there too. So again, the number's 212-209-2877. Lots of stuff going on. I think there's an impeachment thing going on, but I don't know if that's really really that important. But
I think that there is something going on.
All right, but anyway, whatever you want to talk about, let's.
There will be a report about that around 6 p.m.
Yes, and I do want to remind people that we did get a 10-minute late start because WBAI is doing updates on the impeachment trial that's going on. So, but let's go to the phone lines. All right, caller, you are up first. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Aloha, John. It's Kutyu Lenny calling from Hamakua.
All right, you got through to me. It's good to hear from you.
I got through. Hey, did I hear the American president is eating peaches?
Anytime you start talking about this American president eating anything, I get nervous what the next word is, because we know he grabs stuff, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'll let you run with this one. I'm not touching this one.
Hilarious. Anyway, I wanted to mahalo you for coming on our show yesterday and for talking about federal recognition. As can be expected, I'm experiencing some blowback for reporting public record, but hey, that's what we do. And,
you mean to tell me you're getting some heat for listing some of the pro-Fed records?
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy.
The point is, a lot of them say they signed up as pro-kingdom advocates, but they accepted quite a large sum of money to do so. And then they are saying, well, we bailed on it, but the bottom line is their name is still on this list, and they have received funding. So once again, we see the apartheid, and it started with our blood quantum. In Hawaii, you have to be 50% to get a capital N for Native. And if you're 49% or under, you get a small case, lowercase n, like myself, as white passing Native. And so the first division came when they divided us in half saying only people that are 50% of the blood can have land. The rest of you all go crawl under a rock somewhere. Oh, no, wait, that takes up space. Go hide.
Yeah, or jump off a cliff, right?
That was the first division that happened in 1920 with the Hawaiian Homes Act. And then now they're doing a whole nother divisive tactic. And this is the federal government. This is the United States of America. They're all about competition and division. And for Native people, we're about cooperation. That's how you survive. You got to cooperate. So what they've done now is they've created this FedRec runaway train. And all these Kanakas have signed up for it, not really understanding what they're getting themselves into. And then when you call them out on it, it's like it's some big, dark, dirty secret. They don't want anyone to know that they got this money and that they're on the list and that they're working with the state. And these are leaders, our leadership, our Hawaiian leaders that are taking funding and being very cloudy as to where their loyalties truly lie. Because in my mind, like I told one person who was coming after me, I said, maybe you should try getting your name off the list instead of coming at me for reporting public record. Anyway, so we have that whole shit show going on here in Hawaii, where once again we're facing this apartheid. We've got Kanakas ganging up on other Kanakas. Some of them are getting all the money. Others are just emptying the trash up on the mountain and being disregarded. And it's the same old human story, right?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when you watch some of the battling that's going on over the Mauna, for instance. The sad part is looking at the color of the skin and the features of many of the guys who are the Bureau of Land Management officers, the cops. I mean, it's that it's pitting Hawaiian against Hawaiian, and that's what this FedRec thing is doing. And I agree with you. Look, let some people if they erroneously signed up for something thinking it meant something else, then make your statement. And because I know it's pretty disappointing, because there are some people who have over the years gained a certain amount of stature within the Hawaiian community that that are going down this road for various reasons. And I'm sure me coming on your show yesterday it couldn't have made people very comfortable, because I'm just going to give some harsh truth about what FedRec is, what it means here, what it means there, what it means everywhere, and the fact that it is nothing else but subjugation. It is about dashing any of this pro-sovereignty, the pro-independence, this idea that we as Native people have the right to a free and independent existence. It's about dashing that. And then what I get frustrated with is military service, the church, even people who are out there talking about the doctrine of Christian discovery. They're using this not as a reason to say how wrong it is that our free and independent existence was stomped out by church doctrine. But now you'll get a bunch of religious figures out there saying, "Wow, we just need to all be inclusive." This idea of including us in their colonial system is what the doctrine of discovery was all about. So it's like caving in, and so it's frustrating. And that's why I'm glad that you gave me an opportunity, because I know many of the Native guests that you're going to have on your show out there are going to talk about working within the system, running for office, and getting out the vote and that kind of stuff. And you're not going to hear that stuff from me.
Well, I just want to thank you again about coming on our show, and also that you've been so involved with us for a very long time, and what's up a lot more than a lot of Hawaiians do. I wanted to also say something about the Super Bowl. Hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It is the most violent day of the year for family violence.
Yeah. Oh, I'll bet.
That's the day that all the family violence shelters, all the women and children are going to be beaten up because so-and-so's team didn't win or whatever. But it is the most violent day for
Geez, I've never even thought about that correlation. And that's not just correlation, that's causation. So, wow, that's amazing. Thanks for bringing that up.
The second part about it, my friend Leroy Pina, who's on our watch party right now, he writes, the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl are the most active for the sex trafficking of women and girls. Yeah. This year, it'll be in Florida. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can bet. I mean, in Florida, isn't that where the
Yes.
owner of the
Yes.
New England Patriots,
Yes.
frequented
Kraft. Roger Kraft.
frequents
Yes.
the underage, sex parlors or no, I'm sorry, massage parlors. Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
It is. You're right. I
No
mean,
big
it's,
deal.
That's just, it's funny. I didn't even think about that stuff. So that's why, having, a woman enlighten me on these issues. And, obviously we know what the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue is. And that includes Hawaiian women as well. But, the funny thing is even the blood quantum thing, I got to throw this out there. Let's remember
Okay.
the rape culture was a part of almost immediately, not only was spreading a lot of venereal disease, but immediately, causing mixed bloods, because these men that would come in and rape the native women in every continent that they went to, whether it's soldiers in Vietnam or whether it's slave holders, whether it was the colonizers that came into native territories, again, whether it was plantation, the sex slave trade, or Hawaii. I mean, I remember reading about Captain Cook. He knowingly had to contemplate the amount of death that would be caused if his men went onto the islands of Hawaii, knowing that they were carrying venereal disease. I remember reading this and knowing that his men would go there and that there would be, and everyone wants to talk about smallpox and influenza and that kind of stuff. They rarely talk about the venereal disease.
Let me add this point.
Go ahead.
The preferred age of these discoverers were girls aged 9 through 11.
That's what Columbus said. Columbus said that's the age group that the Spanish wanted back there. Yeah.
That's what all the discoverers, they wanted little girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they couldn't have their little girls at home,
And they still do. Epstein, Trump,
layers,
all these guys. Yeah, it's all the same. They're all the same. Yeah.
The layers and layers, but just talking about something fun, like a game like football. It used to be a fun thing. Now it's a racist Roman circus that has so many bad causes attached to it. And it's just amazing to me how people can take something that used to be fun and turn it into a liability for so many people, and yet still keep feeding that machine.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Well, Kayalani, well, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to joining you back on your show. And like I said, this year I'm going to make it happen. I know you called me out last time I said this, but I'm coming to see you this year. My wife and I are going to make a trip out, and I'm going to spend some time with you guys.
We got a big house here.
All right, sounds good. I look forward to it. You take care of yourself, and I look forward to catching up with you again. Thanks for calling in.
Mahalo nui.
Mahalo nui, or as we say, Seogo Nyawe. Anyway, that's Kayulani Mahuka. She's the host of Songs of Sovereignty. You look it up on Facebook. They have a Facebook page, and they do a show every week. It's on Wednesday, and every once in a while I'll show up on there. So by all means, check them out. What time we got? We're almost to the top of the hour. I got my camera right in front of our clock. All right. Here's what we'll do. We'll take one call, and then we'll go to a break, and then we'll do more calls. So again, so people know, the number is 212-209-2877. But we'll take one more call before we go to break. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from? We got you?
From Dallas, Texas.
You're calling from Dallas. All right. Well, good to hear from you. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about the most recent MMIW cases that have been in the news with Selena Not Afraid, and then the woman from Standing Rock that, we had the good news that she was found here in my area. She was, I guess, I don't know how she ended up down here. The story's still not, they're still trying to figure out how she made it down here. But the word got out really quick, and that was good. That one of my friends that lives here, he used to be active military here in Killeen, which is about 70 miles south of Dallas. And he sent me that and said, look, this girl from because he's a member of the Standing Rock tribe. And he said, look, this woman is missing in your area. So I started putting it out, and I started, calling people. And a nearby city here called Carrollton, Texas, which I've gone to deal with that police chief. a few times regarding immigration issues, with how the officers were treating the undocumented people there. So I already knew him. So we were already ready to descend on the police station when the news came out that she had been found. But, it's good that there is a network of,
and actually, there's several. There's a lot of people who reach out. In fact, I even have a group page, and I work with a couple of other social media pages to try to get the word out. Especially, it's more important if you know that somebody may be in an area that you have a high concentration of your group members to. It's really important to get the message out. Yeah, it was. The irony of, or not irony. I hate to overuse that word, but the part that's sickening about Selena is that the immediate thing that they put up in the paper, and the New York Times even covered it, I think. But some of the major, it's one of the first times in a long time, not excluding Savannah Graywind, but that it's got national attention. But the immediate thing they said that there was they said there was no suspicious causes. That they didn't suspect foul play. It's like, how does a 16-year-old end up dead? And you immediately can conclude before there's an autopsy or anything else, or before you even know the story, suggests that no foul play was involved. And that's part. See, that's part of the missing and murdered Indigenous women problem. Is the cover up, because oftentimes they're listed as irresponsible runaways. And even if it does start off as a runaway or somebody who didn't get home in time or left home or whatever else. It still turns into victim shaming, and oftentimes they'll write these things off as dying of natural. They'll say she froze to death. Well, why did she freeze to death? And when they list so many of these as suicides, do you realize how many times they say somebody committed suicide by train? Women committing suicide by train. So you kill somebody, you throw them on the train tracks, and then you don't have to, and you just covered up the murder. And that's what's happened time and time again. So, look, I want to thank you for that call. I really appreciate it. I don't know if do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, what I think they were trying to do by putting out that information, they were trying to deflect attention away to the fact that Montana is the epicenter of MMIWG cases.
Well, on the U.S. side, anyway.
Exactly, on the U.S. side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was to calm the public down, like, she's found, because they're trying to there's something going on up there with Governor Bullock and Senator Tester. They really need to be called out on this.
Well, and there's a website, and I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but I'll talk about it in a future show. The guy that works with me on my show back home, there's a website that talks about where you can look at where all these murders have occurred, and if you isolate it down to Native women who have been discovered as murdered or dead, there's solid forensic evidence that there may be at least several mass murderers involved in this. And yet there is no comprehensive effort to, I know you got all these nice FBI shows and that kind of stuff, that make it sound like it's also scientific, right? But the reality is Native people are still being ignored. And if you look in places like Montana, if you look at other places, on the Canadian side along the Highway of Tears and that kind of Highway 16, as they call it, you know that this isn't just, it would be bad if it was just a culture of acceptance that Native women could be killed. But it goes beyond that. There may be indeed some serial killers involved in this stuff, and yet there seems to be very little effort to do this stuff. And and so when I get one of my listeners calling and says, "Well, Donald Trump is he sent $1.5 million to help the problem," that is such a small amount of money to go to a couple of U.S. attorneys' offices. It doesn't even address this issue. This isn't about U.S. attorneys prosecuting. This is about real investigation. And so again,
the perpetrators of these crimes, they fall between the cracks between tribal law and federal law, and they know this.
Absolutely.
That's why there has to be laws changed that way travel law can cover these cases also.
Well, and unfortunately, there's also a lot of corruption within some of the tribal law enforcement, and part of it is because that's how the system is built. But you're right. The whole idea that a native police force cannot prosecute a non-native perpetrator of a crime just means that then nobody will. Yeah. So all right. I want to thank you for the call. Again, that should have been on my list. I spoke about that on my last show back home, so I didn't think to put it on this list down here. So I thank you for the call. Look, we're a little past the top of the hour. We'll take a break. We'll come back to more of your calls. Again, the number is 212-209-2877. That's 212-209-2877. Hey, while we're on break and playing music in the background, you can call our pledge line too. That number is 516-620-3602. That's 516-620-3602. Hey, let them know you care. Back after this.
Well, this is John Kane from Let's Talk. On Thursday, January 30th, 7 p.m., I'll be screening a film that captures the raw truth of the U.S. and Canadian residential schools. Indian Horse relays the horrors of the 100-year residential school era and the racism that allowed them. Come join me for my first WBAI event of the year featuring Indian Horse at 7 p.m. Thursday, January 30th at the Brooklyn Commons, 388 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, New York.
Pacifica Radio has been compelled under California court order to consider amendments to its bylaws. Now, these bylaws protect the democratic governance system, key to our mission of promoting peace and justice through our broadcasts. The court order was initiated by Pacifica National Board members Donald Goldmacher from KPFA, Mansour Sabag from KPFK, and Bill Crozier from KPFT. Crozier was one of the board members who came and closed down WBAI on October 7th. However, in the opinion of a large majority of the Pacifica National Board, the proposed bylaws amendments are destructive, a slap in the face at all the activists who struggled for years to create a democratic governance structure for Pacifica. It would do away with our local station boards and replace them with rubber stamp advisory boards that now dominate NPR stations. It would put Pacifica under the absolute control of 6 transitional directors appointed by those who filed the lawsuit. They would even have final say over all Pacifica broadcasts, including over WBAI. I'm Alex Steinberg, pro tem chair of the Pacifica National Board and member of WBAI's local station board. I urge all delegates and members to study these bylaws carefully and vote your conscience. This is WBAI, New York.
All right, yeah, that's Alex Steinberg. So I wanted you to hear his take on this whole bylaw thing, and he doesn't even get into some of the real egregious details. Some of this would strip away local station board influence at all. It would actually lower the threshold for even doing things like selling WBAI. It would actually reduces the threshold down considerably. So this is really the continuation of the coup that was perpetrated against WBAI, and of course it affects all of Pacifica. But stations like WBAI that are looked at as something that could be just sold off. I mean, the rest of the frankly the network doesn't hold the potential or see WBAI for the potential that it is or that it was and that it is, and sees it more as, look, a station that has a frequency in the middle of the FM dial that could be unloaded to shore up, at least temporarily, the 4 other struggling stations of Pacifica. So we will talk about this more. Like I said, I may by this evening I'll probably know how the court hearing went. There was an expected ruling today. So next week I'll give you an update on that. But I did want you to hear what Alex's cart was, his piece that he put together on this thing. So, all right, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. Look, you guys, this is your opportunity to call me out. Maybe you hate my assessment of the Super Bowl thing. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. But I look forward to hearing from you. So we'll go to the calls. Caller, you're up first. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey,
Hey, John, it's Thomasina from Bergen County.
Hey, Thomasina, how are you?
I'm good. I came in a little late to the show. I appreciate, of course, the topic. I think I know what the topic is. I just want to say that, women are not valued really anywhere around the world, anywhere. No matter where we are, domestic violence, the horrible divorce laws, just everything about women in this society and most societies around the world, we're not valued.
Well, to be clear, they're objectified. You're objectified and you're valued almost as a commodity, but you are not being afforded the value as a human being. And I think so when you say they're not valued, you're right. But I think it needs to be put into context, because being valued as a piece of property is not being valued as a human being.
Right. So that's my point. Like, we're not valued as humans at all. I'm really having issues with people that think the new Family Act is great. I'm like, are you kidding me? We got crumbs. Like, we still can't take off and raise our children and not have to worry about how we're going to put food on the table. So, like, we're not doing anything to really be progressive around women's issues. I get what you're saying. Like, there's not a lot of interest in Native women, but I think just overall, there's not hardly any interest in women in general as making us a part of, the human society. And so I just want to say, my daughter was reading a book. I'm happy to say, in English. I can't remember the title of it, but it was all about, I think it was when oil was first discovered in the West somewhere. And it was, of course, the oil was on native lands.
There's a book called Killers of the Flower Moon, and it's about the Osage murders in 1920. It's a great book written by a New York author, a guy who writes for the New Yorker, a guy by the name of David Gran. It's a
great book.
It's supposed to be made into a movie, and hopefully, because I think Scorsese and DiCaprio are the ones who are producing this film. I hope they don't just turn it into the whole white knight FBI thing, and I hope they capture, as the author does, especially in the end of the book. If you read this book and you read the story, it's important that you don't stop at after the arrest is made. You've got to see this thing through the end, because he revisits the modern, the current contemporary effects of the Osage at the very end of that book, and really makes and he really brings that home. He was a guest on the show, as a matter of fact. So great book, Killers of the Flower Moon: The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI is the name of the book.
Yeah, so I don't know why it made me think of that. Like, again, Native people being killed, and nobody's really, looking into it.
Well, and in that case, I mean, just to put it in proper perspective, there may be no other situation that represents the level of premeditation that the Osage women in particular went through. Because what happened was, the white men would come in and marry up these Native women, have children with them, and then kill off the women. And then, as guardians of their half Native kids, they would have control of the oil head rights. And of course, the men who had head rights, they would be killed off too. So this was like this broad-based. This wasn't a serial killing. This was an entire community, a whole culture
a conspiracy killing.
Big. I mean, where everybody was involved, and politicians at the highest, and frankly, even the FBI had to look away from the idea that it wasn't just a serial killing. They had to concentrate and made it sound like there's only a couple of people involved in this thing. So yeah, but I guess to the point that I need to make with you. While I agree with everything you said, what compounds it more with Native people is the remoteness of our communities. We are so far removed from where any resources are ever being willingly spent. So when you look at the lack of policing and the stripping away of local control for the native governance to deal with crimes committed against their people, so you have look, you talk about a state that like Montana, that is huge, that has the population of Vermont. I mean, so I mean, and that's not even a very populated state. So you end up having nobody willing to throw resources. There's a movie that I showed downstairs called Wind River that addressed it a little bit. It has a little bit of the white hero kind of thing going on with it, of course, but at least it captured some of the image. So, but
I'm gonna try and make your movie next week.
All right, please do. Come on out. It's a good film, and and the film is great, but the conversation oftentimes is just as good. So look forward to seeing you next week. All right. All right, we got another one up there. All right, well, let me get. I can't believe this, Reggie. You said sometimes I gotta get some outrageous caller that chums the water. I'm not asking for anybody, but again, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. Look, I know you guys have something on your mind. I mean, I suppose is the hearing still going on? The trial?
You mean for the impeachment?
Yeah,
that's still going on.
Oh, so what are you? All you people are locked on your C-SPAN here and NPR? No, you're not. Come on, tell the truth. Give me a call. Look, I'll talk about that too. I think I probably got a few humorous lines I could add to the debacle that is the Trump impeachment. But again, look, last week I took the opportunity to really get into talking politics, and that was a good show, and I appreciate the callers who participated. But look, this is your opportunity. This show is as much for you as it is for me, giving an opportunity to give a Native perspective. I'm not saying the Native perspective wins the day in these conversations, and I'm not trying to convert people. I'm not trying to say you have to see things my way. The whole goal of this show is to let you know that there is a way of seeing things my way, or not my way necessarily, but there is a Native perspective that is oftentimes not thrown into the mix here. And again, me trying to offer a little bit of insight on where the San Francisco team gets its name, who's playing in the Super Bowl. And of course, we know the mockery that, that Kansas City and Washington and other teams, Atlanta baseball, the fact that they have used Native imagery. And this is an ongoing battle. In fact, I just signed a petition for a school here in the state of New York that is looking at this whole thing. In fact, again, I'll encourage people to go to my Let's Talk Native TV. Can you see my shirt? Yeah, LTN TV. Let's Talk Native TV. Go to my YouTube channel and check out my latest short form video, which was "We Are Not Your Mascots," and you'll learn something. The other day was the anniversary. It was the 5th anniversary of my first engagement with the Board of Education for the Lancaster School District in Western New York, and that's Lancaster, New York, not Lancaster, PA. They invited me. They invited a prominent Seneca in the area to put together a committee that would come in and try to enlighten them about just what the mascot issue meant to us. And so I was selected along with a couple of educators from the University of Buffalo and somebody who was more involved in the arts and that kind of stuff. But we had five of us that were a part of a committee. We met with the Lancaster School Board and their school administrators in what was considered an open session. It was a public work session is what they called it, although not much public was there. And the video of that is on, in fact, you can see, find it shared. I think I shared it both on my WBAI page and the WBAI page. So if you see a little group, it's a little bit of a blurry video, but the audio is pretty good, and you can tell. Yeah, I share my thoughts on going to a school, as Shawnee and I talked about, that had a Native mascot. I went to the Cambridge Central High School in past Albany, and we were the Cambridge Indians, and of course I was the only Native kid in the school, and mine was the only family. And so the uncomfortable piece of that. And then I went on to say, look, whether you think that you're being respectful of the name or not doesn't mean that your opponents aren't. And I cite the Philadelphia Eagles fan who covers himself in, he takes his shirt off and he's covered in green paint, and he shows up there with a duffel bag, pulls out a duffel bag with a rubber head made up to look like a native person with a headdress and war paint, impales it with a plastic sword, and then holds it up during the game when the Eagles are playing the Washington football team. And it gets lots of laughs, lots of grins and everything else. But I asked that school board, I said, can you imagine being a native person who happens to perhaps like the Philadelphia? Maybe they like their mascot because Eagles are important to us, right? So you go to a Philadelphia Eagles game, and some lunatic, in green skin paint, pulls out an impaled Indian head. And how do you explain that to your 7-year-old son or grandchild or granddaughter or whatever else? I mean, it's one of the reasons that kids shouldn't even be brought to football games, as far as I'm concerned. Between the alcohol and just the madness of fandemonium. And look, keep in mind, the word fan comes from the word fanatic. I mean, that's what it means. So I don't know.
And heavens to Murgatroyd over the fact that if the scenario was that head would have been a Caucasian head rather than someone of color, then people would have lost their minds. All of media would have generally lost their minds over that.
When he first came onto the scene, RG3 was the quarterback for the Washington football team. Mm-hmm. And I said, what if that same fan took a head that looked like a black man, put it in a noose and held it up? Now, nobody would have tolerated it. Everybody would recognize that was inappropriate, even if it said RG3 across his forehead or whatever else. No. Everybody knows that would have been wrong. I'm not saying some white people wouldn't have loved it, because you would have. Some of you would have. But if he went in there with a black head and a noose rather than a native head impaled with a sword, all hell would have broke loose. But you know what? And to further the point about the acceptability of this thing, when not only can you find the image all over the internet, I mean, it's really easy to find, but when the Philadelphia Flyers, the hockey team, played the Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup playoffs, he did the same thing. Only this time he was in orange paint. But he had the same thing across the head. It said Black Hawk, Dead Hawk. And the Versus Sports Network that was carrying the Stanley Cup used him with his impaled Indian head as the backdrop for the graphics when they went to commercial and posted the score up. So this guy got on national television because of this, just atrocious act of his. I mean, it's incredible. All right. Let me go to a caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hi. I think it's a great show. I love the female caller. It actually made reference to like the Roman-esque gladiator battling it out. I mean, this is the same thing.
Sure.
Bring up some great points. I love WBAI and I love learning, but I'm learning so many more and more horrible things that humans have done. I mean, the first thing with Hawaii was terrible, but then there was a concentrated plan to infiltrate an Indian tribe because they had oil and decimated by means of legally marrying. I mean, this is documented. This is not.
Oh no! This is literally again. This is one of J. Edgar Hoover's 1920. 1920, and it's 50 miles from where the Tulsa riots took place. Keep in mind. I mean, so it's literally 50 miles down the road from the infamous, Tulsa riots. Where I don't know why they call it riot. What's that?
Right. Was it the Tulsa? That was 100 years ago, also in 1920.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, it was the same period of time, because these murders that took place with the Osage took place for over a decade. This wasn't just something that happened for a couple of years, but no, this is well documented. Again, the book is called "Killers of the Flower Moon." It's David Gran, that's with 2 N's, is the author. The book is supposed to be made into a movie, but no, this is well documented and it's well established. This was the FBI's first big case, and J. Edgar Hoover was under a lot of pressure to make sure they got a conviction, but they didn't want to go too far with it. They didn't want to turn it into something that was going to be. They wanted to treat it as if it was an isolated set of serial murders, not necessarily a racial thing, and they stayed away from doing a full investigation.
Yeah, but the level of conspiracy to actually marry people and then kill the wives.
The coroners, the doctors, all of the realtors, the postmaster, the people who own the store. See, these the deal was the Osage were actually considered the richest people in the world in 1920. because there was such a massive amount of gold, oil reserves, black gold, oil reserves found, and they had all the mineral rights. So they were wealthy. And what the federal government said is, yeah, but you guys are too ignorant to know how to deal with your wealth. So we're going to appoint every one of you a guardian. And of course, the guardians were all white, and they were all, they're all business people. They're all the segments of the society around them. And so white people they were taken advantage of for funerals. They paid more. I mean, they were some of the only people who had cars, and they paid for, they were raped financially as well as, murdered, married again, so their children would inherit the head rights. And so a white man who fathered some half-breed kids could control the oil revenue. And that's, this was literally the most premeditated and broad-based sets of premeditated murders in the history of the United States.
And if you really wanted to go to the fullest extent of the law, this is conspiracy. This is everything. I mean, how many charges could you make? Insurance fraud, legal isn't that?
It's incredible. Yeah,
supplying a legal document for the reasons of committing a horrible crime. I mean, there was a few things that I did want to ask you about, and the 49ers thing, but also your co-host. He's been around WBAI a long time, right? I love his voice.
Which who?
Co-host?
The guy who was talking with you before.
Oh, Reggie. Yeah, Reggie. Yeah,
Reggie, you've been on BAI a long time, right? How long?
Reggie's he's a household name here. Yeah.
I've been around here for a while. At least I'll conservatively say about 2 decades.
2 decades.
Maybe. Actually, it's probably.
Oh, you came here when you were only 15, huh?
Yeah, really, yeah.
So the numbers of 49ers, what happened there? Like, what? I didn't even hear about what. There was a whole, and that's where Trump's, isn't that where Trump's fortune came from? The grandfather opened brothels in those areas. And
he did some of that, but no, the 49ers is that number. The name comes from the 1849, which is when gold was discovered in California, and it initiated the gold rush. And so the 49ers was the label that all of those people who rushed out to California to make their fortune prospecting for gold. But there were people there, and they happened to be native people. So one of the ways that you secured your mining rights was to kill all the native people around there. And that's why the irony of a team with a native mascot playing a team with the 49ers mascot is completely missed by most people. And but of course I had to bring it up. I got to ruin everybody's fun, I guess.
That's but that's great that you bring this up, because I never knew this, and it's great to learn something that, of course, they didn't just go there and say, oh, this is no occupied land, let's just start mining it. They actually had to commit a genocide.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
If you look it up, if you go online, there's a couple of good articles. But if you go online and you just look up, the gold rush or the gold rush and Indians, for instance, or something like that, you'll see. And again, the amount. I mean, they literally were taxing the gold so they could fund private militias and pay them off, as well as pay bounties on scalps to kill native people. They actually used some of the gold revenue. And the thing is, native people couldn't mine. They were forbidden from doing any of the actual. So even though it was their lands, you would think they would have every right to go there like all these white people did. But no, native people, the Mexicans were all run out, and native people were forbidden to mine the lands in California. Instead, they were just murdered for it. It's crazy.
Right. And then you take this across the Atlantic Ocean. Look what happened in South Africa, the apartheid. I mean, mining gold, oil, all these huge resources basically are wealth and power. And this is what people fight over. People are willing to kill. I mean, I hate to say this when you kept on talking about the impeachment trial, but hasn't there been, like, even when Bush lied about all of this stuff, and that's a criminal act to falsify evidence, and then people are murdered. And people are saying, well, Trump sort of negotiated with the Ukrainians and Biden is his opponent. And, well, Biden was corrupt, but we can't talk about that. Yeah, he was vice president. We still don't know when his son started there, and at what point does he get paid, and what services were rendered to this company? I mean, this is the most. What do you need, J. Edgar Hoover and the?
No, most of the stuff, some of the stuff is obvious, and we know.
Honestly, do you need inside to come in a wheelchair? I think there's a criminal act going on here, and this is a TV show.
Well,
I mean,
and the crazy part is, in down the road here, all of this stuff is going to come out. I mean, because what's going to happen? Somebody's going to write their books and that kind of stuff. Everybody's going to know the truth at some point. But by then, Trump would have served out his terms. He would have enriched himself. And again, who knows what happens in November? I mean, will he win again? I mean, can you imagine if he wins again? And I mean, it's absurd.
Wait, hold on. You bring up a good point, because if he's impeached, can he run again, and can he get voted in again? I haven't heard this.
I don't know. I don't. If he's removed from office, I think he's. I think I heard this someplace that if he's removed from, which isn't going to happen. I mean, honestly, they're not going to indict him.
Just in the theory, let's say they go through this trial, he's removed. Can he run for president again and legally be elected?
I don't think so. I think once you've been disqualified as a sitting president, I don't think you can run again. I think I heard that. I don't know. I didn't hear any statute on that, but again, one of the guys who just got sentenced down here in Manhattan a week and a half ago, Chris Collins. Here's a guy who commits insider trading violations. He's invested in some Australian companies and pharmaceutical. Convinces a bunch of other politicians to buy in stock. Actually, manipulates some laws, I think, to fund some of this company. Finds out that they failed on some clinical trials for multiple sclerosis. And from from Washington D.C., I think somebody said from the White House lawn, even, I don't know, but calls his son and tells him to dump the stock. So they dump the stock. They save millions of dollars in losses, or hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses anyway. So they indict him, and he swears that he's innocent. He carries that lie for a whole year. Runs for re-election as a congressman in Western New York, in the area not far from where I live, and wins. Even while he's under indictment, he wins the election, lying the whole time about his innocence, and then turns around and pleads guilty, and then throws his asks for mercy of the court, saying that he has remorse and that it was some sort of lapse in judgment. He lied for over a freaking year about it, ran on that lie. I don't know how, it seems to me that if you can run for office under an indictment and then plead guilty later, why would you be? I mean, he should have gotten 5 years. He got 26 months. I mean, he is going to prison, I guess. But why would he be given any leniency if he lied for not only a whole year, but actually ran for an elected office on that lie and turned out and won? But again, that kind of gets to your point about how people can keep kicking the can on this stuff and get away with. Well, in the case of the Osage, get away with murder, and as long as nobody's going after them. It's crazy.
Well, that was one of two other points that I really wanted to make. Number one, football. I mean, the OJ situation. We could have a whole hour just talking about the amazing things about that. The greatest football player, the biggest celebrity. Arnold Schwarzenegger joked on the Tonight Show that O.J. Simpson was going to be the Terminator, but they weren't believing that he could be a believable killer. And do you know something? The profound philosophy is that that's maybe why he got off, because he just seemed like such a nice guy. Everybody knew him as this guy running through the airport.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
I'm a movie. Nobody could think that somebody could do something to behead somebody with a knife. Yeah. I mean, it's almost, people don't want to think that, but that's a whole other situation. The big thing is Bill Clinton and Donald Trump a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein? Supposedly he was on a plane that he didn't want the Secret Service to be on. Now, that is a protocol that I can't believe the Secret Service agreed to. And number one, why would he not want the Secret Service on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein that's notorious for pedophilia? Yet Bill Clinton is friends with this guy. He's the president of the United States. He's supposedly a notorious sexual predator.
The lawyer representing Trump in this impeachment hearing, Dershowitz, said that he was massaged by underage girls, but he kept his underwear on. I mean, what a pervert! I mean, this is like the culture. This is the American culture. And you know what? The evangelical right is completely prepared to look the other way on all this stuff, and that's what's so absurd about it. It's crazy. All right, thanks for the call. I greatly appreciate it. All right, we went past the bottom of the hour. So let me take a quick break. Catch my breath. We'll play another Logan Stats soon, and we'll come back and we'll round out the hour with your calls. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk. All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane, and this is Let's Talk, and this is me saying Let's Talk with you. So you, the listening audience, you get to participate in this program. We've got a bunch of stuff thrown out there, so you're not pigeonholed into into what to talk about. So again, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call. Look, I appreciate the callers. Again, the caller from Texas who reminded me about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's always an issue, but this past week, this young girl, Selena, Not Afraid, was her body was found in Montana. She'd been missing since New Year's Day, so she's been missing for a while, and then to hear, and I think he's a Native police officer. I think the chief of police was actually Native, and it's there's no foul play suspected. Well, I'm sorry, give me a freaking break. I mean, these cover-ups. And I gotta say, look, as part of the reason that that many of these crimes go unresolved is because Native law enforcement can't prosecute white men for the most part. I mean, they create a few exceptions. They call them trials. To see if Native people could prosecute white people, as if we couldn't, right? But the numbers suggest that 70% of the violence against Native women is committed by non-Native people. But that still means 30% is committed by Native people. So our own people have, and we see this. And, in fact, Kayulani, we talked about this on their show a little bit. The patriarchy, the male dominance, this notion of male dominance. And I want to be clear, because everybody thinks that when you talk about patriarchy and what a throwback it was and what a exception it was, especially for Native people where women had a role. I'm not suggesting that we lived under matriarchy either. It wasn't that it was a woman-controlled society. It wasn't. We just had a level of equality, and I don't want to say sameness, but we had shared responsibilities in our communities. Women never would have tolerated this idea of domestic abuse, and our men wouldn't have tolerated it because our women wouldn't have, and they had the right to speak out. Even when we hear about the women's suffrage movement, I got to tell you, the strong women's suffrage movement. I know a lot of people were out in Seneca Falls for the Women's March this past weekend, and even some of the women's suffrage movement wasn't exactly very racially diverse. In fact, racially diverse. They did not support black people voting, women or men. I mean, there was even the movements that people want to attribute these positive changes for, many of them were flawed. I don't know. I just got to throw it out there. Again, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. Thus far we've had some great callers, and I appreciate you guys participating and being a part of the program. Do we got any on there? Yeah. All right. We got one. We got somebody to go. So we'll go with it. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
The name is Bill.
All right,
I'm
Bill.
Calling from East Orange, New Jersey. Here's a potential nightmare. I don't know the answer to this question, but the amendment after FDR said you could only serve for 2 terms as president. Assume Trump gets removed and doesn't serve out his first full term. Could he possibly run again for 2 more terms since he didn't fulfill the first term to its completion? I don't know the answer, but that's a horrible thought. That you could possibly spend 2 more terms.
Well, first off, I'm pretty sure I heard
I heard you say that
on one of the reports that you couldn't run if you were impeached. But the other thing is, I think there are some presidents since FDR that didn't serve a full term. You know, like Gerald Ford, for instance, he came in, partway through a term. There have been a few people, and I don't think you can be elected to serve even part of what would be a third term. I think if you serve a partial term, you still could serve one more term, but I don't think you could make up the difference in what you missed out on for whatever reason.
I would hope not.
Yeah, no, but
I'm not sure.
But
another point.
But the crazy part is, you look at this guy that Trump is supporting so much in Vladimir Putin. I mean, here's a guy who's changing laws in Russia so he can extend his sense of permanence in that government.
No, actually, he wants to become prime minister and give the parliament more power. So as prime minister, he'd step down as president, become prime minister, but since the parliament now has more power, the prime minister would have more power.
Exactly.
I mean, not that I'm a fan, but he's clever.
No, there's no question that he's clever. So, all right, hey, thanks for the call. I greatly appreciate it. But that would be kind of a scary thought that you not only would remove a president, but you would actually, by removing him, give him an opportunity to serve longer by running for not only a second term, but a third term because you didn't complete your first term. Yeah, I don't think that's possible, but that would be a scary thought. All right, do we got anybody else lined up there yet? Yep. All right, we'll go to another caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Bob, and I'm calling from New York City.
Bob, thanks for calling.
Well, I'm calling because I heard the caller before the last one, convict O.J. Simpson again, and I heard you laugh about it. And I'm calling because I'm a retired journalist, reporter and editor, and I was a news editor when that trial happened. And let me tell you something. No one has any evidence that O.J. committed that crime. Johnny Cochran and his defensive team shredded every piece of evidence that the prosecutor offered. There was no confession. There were no eyewitnesses. There was no blood in a house that had white carpeting from the door right on through the bathroom and bedroom. There was the cops who signed a statement to get a search warrant for the house, lied in writing to the judge to get the search warrant. The dirty cops then held a vial of blood for O.J., and some of it went missing. The exact amount that was found on his socks in his bedroom went missing from that vial. And the detective didn't turn that vial in until a day later, okay? And could not explain and said that he never did that before. The medical examiner said there could not have been any blood on those socks the way that they found them because the blood went from from the sock on one side of the ankle to the sock on the other side of the ankle. And if O.J. had been wearing those socks, the ankle would have been in between the blood. Okay? Now, without any blood at the site that was found on any of his clothing, without any marks on him, and we know that because there was a police photograph taken of him as soon as he returned from where he was in Detroit, and showed nothing. They had him pull apart his mouth and even show his teeth. Not a mark on him.
Well, let me just say, look, I'm not trying to reconvict or in your case reacquit O.J. Simpson. Look, the trial, it is what it is. He was acquitted and he didn't serve any time for it. He got himself into loads of trouble afterwards. But to suggest that there was no evidence, there was plenty of evidence, and most of it was circumstantial, granted. But that's the way a lot of these things go. Did the prosecutor and the cops screw up and were they corrupt? Absolutely. I think they were absolutely dirty, but I don't think there's much question in that. So, but that's the failure of the whole system. Not just the failure to convict him, but it's the corrupt. It gets to this whole level of corruption within the police departments and prosecutors and that kind of stuff. So I agree with you on all of that. And I'm look, he was acquitted. Do I believe that he played a role in his wife's murder? Yes, I do. But that's just, and my belief is nothing. It's just an opinion. I'm not publicly convicting him or or skewing the public opinion about him. O.J. Simpson is what he is, and so look, I'm not trying to relitigate O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence here, but you make a good point, and there's no question about it that his legal team did what they had to do. I don't have a problem with Kardashian or Dershowitz or any of these guys. I got more of a problem with Dershowitz being involved with Jeffrey Epstein's kiddie porn stuff than but he's not prosecuted for that either. So, but there's to suggest that there's no evidence against OJ or against any of these guys. No, there's evidence. We just don't always hear it. But I don't know if you got a final thought on it. All right, you're gone. All right. We'll go to the next caller. Caller, you're up next. You might be our last caller because my calls usually last a little bit. So you might be our last caller. So go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hey, John. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, I was listening to the guy before you, and I would just wanted to say that the whole OJ thing. Why do people keep jumping back to that and like, oh well, he got off? That's like the first thing I've seen other people try to jump to all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, whatever. But I just want to thank you for. I follow your YouTube channel. I'm posting on there. I share it all the time, and it's just really, really great that you share all this information. A lot of stuff that people don't know or people choose not to know. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all that information, putting that out there.
Well, I appreciate you listening and following the work that I do. And again, there's no question that among the things that I do is I do share just plain out facts and history. But I do offer opinions, and you can not agree with my opinion, but you really can't not agree with the facts that I put out there. You can research it yourself, and I will say this every time. If you hear something that I say that seems to not jive with what you think you know, then check it out. Do the research. Obviously we live in a world where information is almost instantaneous. You can always verify what I'm saying and check the veracity of a historical claim that I might make. And again, the Osage murders is a perfect example of that. And there's some of these things that I repeat from time to time because I know I have new listeners each week. And I think some of these things deserve to be, warrant repeating. So for those of you who think, well, why does he always say the same thing? Well, bear with me on that. That's all I can say. All right. I look like I got time for one more caller. We got another one right there. All right. We got time for one more caller. You're up next. You're up last. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, John. This is Cindy. How are you?
Hey, Cindy. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to bring attention to the post that I put. I put it on earlier, and I also put it in the comments section of this post. I really, really, really want to get some concern going in Albany, if we can, about the murdered MMIW and men, and I'd really like to be able to turn that park red with bandanas and red dresses and really get some media attention. I don't have any power to do anything, but let's get the attention of those folks that do have the power.
Well, so people understand. For one thing, Cindy's my friend. She works in Albany. She lives in that general area. Cindy was one of the solitary figures that hung a bandana and a dress up in the Capitol Plaza or mall or whatever you want to call it, Empire Plaza, I guess it's called, in Albany, and that was around Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is a day that we have used to mark a day of raising awareness on missing and murdered Indigenous women and men, because Native men are also not only death by cop, but their murdered and missing status is being glossed over for some of the same reason that happens to women, because of lack of resources and lack of prioritizing Native lives and that kind of stuff. But so Cindy, you had posted that you're looking and you'd like to find some Native people in the Capital District area who would step up with you as well to try to do a little bit more with making a visual impact at the Capitol Mall.
Correct. Yeah, I'd really like to maybe get some speakers, people that know just a little bit more about it than I do, and get some real media attention going. Get the union, the women's groups involved. see what we can do to get some motion behind this. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure.
The money that's needed to go after some of this.
Well, again, thanks for calling and putting that out there. And again, thanks for putting it up on Facebook. So again, look for the post by Cindy on my group pages. And she's looking for some help. She's looking for people to participate with her. She's willing to do some of the effort. We'd like to create an event in Albany. I think I'd make the trip out there for this. I mean, it's not as far as coming all the way to New York City, so it's still a haul for me. But it gives me a chance to catch up with my friend Cindy as well. So I want to thank Cindy for her work, and I encourage anybody who's in the Capital District area who catches this show either on podcast or online or whatever to maybe reach out to Cindy and see if you guys can't coordinate something, and I'd help facilitate that as well. All right, hey, we got to get out of here. We got another show coming up. We got Driving Forces coming up right after us. So let me get out of here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the callers, and we'll see you next week. A reminder: next week is my monthly event, my first monthly event of the year. That's January 30th at 7 p.m. We will be showing Indian Horse, a film about the residential schools and the tragedy that the residential schools were. That's going to be next week at the Brooklyn Commons downstairs, 388 Atlantic Avenue at the street level. Come to the back and we'll watch a film and have a discussion. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk. Yahweh.
How am I supposed to miss you if I always have you here? Have you?